So it's coming on September, which means that it is time to start talking about ShakeTember, which is the annual celebration of the works of William Shakespeare that takes place here on BookTube every September. If you follow my channel, I imagine you follow the other channels who all made their announcement videos. The hosts of this event are Jason from Old Blues Chapter and Verse, Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading, and Nicole from A Day of Small Things. And I'll leave links to their announcement videos in the description, and I'll leave some other details in the description as well. Now, like I said, if you follow my channel, I imagine you've probably seen the announcement videos, but just in case anyone missed them, I thought I would make my own video just letting any stragglers know about this event. And I felt a little obligated to make a video as well. Not obligated, not like I was required to, but I wanted to make a video myself, just letting you know I'll know about it, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my possibilities of what I might read for it as well. I felt slightly obligated because I was one of the co-creators of this event way back in the day. I think it was 2017 that we first did ShakeTember, where I and Curtis from Curtis Books and Books, who hasn't made videos in a long time, but he and I kind of started this event together. We didn't really know we were founding a BookTube event when we started it. We just thought we were gonna read a bunch of Shakespeare plays and post about them. And it happened to start in September, so we just kept doing it in September. So I felt a slight obligation to talk about this, and of course to participate. I did pop back on BookTube to make a ShakeTember video last year, back when I was not actively posting, because, again, I sort of felt like it was my duty a little bit to do something for ShakeTember. And since now I am actively making videos again, I definitely want to participate and hopefully post some videos. So I'm going to run down very quickly the schedule that the three hosts have put together. They've kind of put together a schedule of things that they're reading and watching, actually. And ShakeTember this year, something that I think is neat about ShakeTember this year is that it's involving not just like films as well as reading the plays, but also Nicole from A Day of Small Things in particular is including a play by Christopher Marlowe. So there's also a little bit of discussion around the sort of writers who were writing around the same time as Shakespeare, but we're not Shakespeare, obviously. So, in the week of September 6th, Kelly is going to be discussing a bunch of film adaptations of King Lear on her channel. Jason is going to be discussing Pericles. Nicole is going to be discussing Richard II. So that's September 6th. On September 13th, Kelly is going to be discussing Measure for Measure, which is a very good and very underrated Shakespeare play. Jason, I guess, is doing nothing at all, quote unquote. And Nicole is doing Edward II by Christopher Marlowe. On September 20th, Kelly is going to discuss Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, which I'm going to bring up again in a minute. Jason is going to be discussing As You Like It, and Nicole is going to be talking about a handful of Shakespeare biographies, which should be cool. I myself have only actually read one biography of Shakespeare, and it was a relatively slim one, and it wasn't super scholarly. It was actually Anthony Burgess's biography of Shakespeare, which is excellent. It's very well written. It's very good, but I get the sense it's not the most scholarly thing, so I'm in particular looking forward to that one. And then the final week of September, September 27th, Kelly is going to post about Julius Caesar. Jason is going to post a Zoom discussion with the directors of the Dragon Theater Productions, who do some productions of Shakespeare in Colorado. And then Nicole is going to talk about The Merchant of Venice. So that is the host schedule. I, of course, have 80 million ideas for what I'd like to do for ShakeTember myself. And, of course, that partly includes reading some of the same things that the hosts are reading. So the plays on the list of plays that the hosts are covering that really capture my attention are Pericles, which I've read once, a long time ago, but don't have very strong memories of. I just remember thinking it was very odd as far as Shakespeare plays go. I also, my attention was caught by As You Like It. I had already been considering rereading As You Like It just in general, not even involving ShakeTember. And As You Like It is absolutely wonderful. I actually made a video of my own about it one ShakeTember ago. I think it was called ShakeTube back then. And then Julius Caesar caught my attention as well. I'm not as certain about Julius Caesar. It's not my favorite Shakespeare play, but that's a good reason to revisit a Shakespeare play if you didn't like it or had reservations about it, and revisit. That's a good reason to revisit it. So those are the plays that caught my attention. I have here my complete Shakespeare. I actually own 3 different copies of complete works of Shakespeare, which is kind of funny. So I would like to reread one of those. One at least. So there's that, as far as Shakespeare plays go. Also, Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell very much caught my attention in Kelly's video. I've owned this copy for a few years. I got it for Christmas one year, and it was, usually I don't really like unsolicited book gifts, because often someone will get me a book that I'm either totally uninterested in, or sometimes maybe only like mildly or half interested in. But this was one of the unsolicited book gifts that I got, where I was just like, oh yes, absolutely, that's a book I was dying to read. And of course, 4 years later, I have not read it. Now, for reasons I'm going to talk about in a second, I'm not as sure that I'm going to get to reading this as I was when Kelly first posted about it. When Kelly first made her video and talked about reading this, I was immediately like, oh, this is a good chance, good kick in the butt for me to get this read finally. And I think I told Kelly in a comment that I was going to, but I'm not so certain anymore. Because I kind of have my own Shakespeare-adjacent work of fiction that I really want to read for ShakeTember. This is the one thing that I am going to read. I'm actually going to start it today, and I'm, as of recording this, which is in August, I'm going to start it today, so I know I'm going to read this, and I'm going to post a video about it. And that is this. So this is Enter Ghost by Isabella Hammad. And let me read you the dust jacket for this novel. So, after years away from her family's homeland and reeling from a disastrous love affair, actress Sonia Nazir returns to Haifa to visit her older sister Hanin. This is her first trip back since the Second Intifada and the deaths of their grandparents. While Hanin made a life here commuting to Tel Aviv to teach at the university, Sonia remained in London to focus on her acting career and now dissolute marriage. On her return, she finds her relationship to Palestine is fragile, both bone-deep and new. At Hanin's, Sonia meets the charismatic and candid Mariam, a local director, and finds herself roped into a production of Hamlet on the West Bank. Sonia is soon rehearsing Gertrude's lines in classical Arabic and spending more time in Ramallah than Haifa, along with a dedicated group of men from all over historic Palestine who, in spite of competing egos and priorities, each want to bring Shakespeare to that side of the wall. As opening night draws closer, it becomes clear just how many violent obstacles stand before a troupe of Palestinian actors. Amidst it all, the life Sonia once knew starts to give way to the daunting, exhilarating possibility of finding a new self in her ancestral home. And I thought that sounded great, and I am trying to read books about and by Palestinian authors. Isabella Hammad is an English Palestinian author. I don't know that she was necessarily raised in Palestine, but her roots are from Palestine. And this sounds really fascinating. The idea of putting on Hamlet in classical Arabic, that alone just intrigues me. But everything else around it just sounds really great. So I'm going to be reading this as kind of a Shakespeare-adjacent work of fiction, in addition to hopefully at least one play. And then I also have some more literature that's kind of works of literature from the time of Shakespeare that isn't Shakespeare. And I don't have a copy of Edward II. I am interested in Edward II, but the non-Shakespeare literature from his time that I have here that I'm interested in, the first one is The Spanish Tragedy by Thomas Kidd. I found this copy in a used bookstore a little bit ago, and I grabbed it because The Spanish Tragedy is a revenge tragedy, and at least according to Harold Bloom, the kind of demon that lurks around ShakeTember, because the original iteration of ShakeTember, which was called ShakeTube, we were also reading what Harold Bloom had to say about each play that we read. That's not true anymore, but Harold Bloom is sort of the demon who haunts us in ShakeTember. He argues that this had a big influence on Hamlet. And actually, in his essay on Hamlet, in his book about Shakespeare, a lot of the page count of that essay is devoted to talking about the influence of the Spanish tragedy. And so I'm kind of really interested in reading it. So I feel pretty strongly about reading this. I've been wanting to read it since I found it in a bookstore earlier this year. So that's that. And then I also own The Duchess of Malfi by John Webster. I don't know as much about this one. I've heard good things. It's another revenge tragedy, and I think I kind of find the idea of revenge tragedies interesting, and that's sort of a theme that I wanted to insert into these possibilities. So I may read this. I'm not quite as sure. It's a short little thing. We'll see. And then finally, I have this collection of poems. So this is Ben Jonson and the Cavalier poets. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. But this is an anthology of poems, a big chunk of which are by Ben Jonson. But then we also have poems in here by Richard Corbett, Robert Herrick, Thomas Carew, James Shirley, Sir John Suckling, William Habington, Edmund Waller, William Cartwright, Richard Lovelace, Abraham Cowley, and so on and so forth. They're poets who would have been writing in and around Shakespeare's time. And Ben Jonson himself actually was known as a kind of rival playwright of Shakespeare's. They kind of vied for being the most popular playwrights of their day. But Ben Jonson ended up writing this actually very beautiful tribute to Shakespeare. This very beautiful poem that was kind of a tribute to Shakespeare's brilliance, which I kind of love, that Ben Jonson was Shakespeare's rival in life, but then still found it in himself to commemorate Shakespeare's brilliance after Shakespeare's death. And Ben Jonson is the poet in here who I'm most interested in. I've always really liked Ben Jonson's poetry, but just never explored it super thoroughly. I've read like a handful of his poems here and there. And so reading some of Ben Jonson's poems would be really nice. I'm not as interested in Ben Jonson's plays, frankly. I have read Volpone, and I have to be honest, I don't really remember very much about it because it didn't do much for me. So I'm not as interested in Ben Jonson's plays, but his poems, sure, certainly. So anyway, that's my sort of pile of possibilities, a little rundown of what's going on for ShakeTember. I hope that I will have at least a video about Enter Ghost, a video about one Shakespeare play, and I hope a video about the Spanish tragedy. I hope. That's my goal. So that's that. I would love to hear what anyone else has decided to read for ShakeTember, and I'm looking forward to it. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Talk to you all soon. Bye.